camera. We're all set.
We're ready to go?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Providence Councilwoman Joanne Ryan. Welcome to the Committee on Finance regular meeting on Thursday, January 27th at 5:32 p.m. Madam Clerk, could you kindly read the roll?
Chairwoman Ryan,
Present.
Vice Chairwoman Castillo,
Can you hear us?
Wait, no, Councilwoman Anthony saying she can't hear.
Can you hear us?
Tina, to the right where it says mute all, unmute them.
So did they hear anything I had to say?
They can
We
hear us.
understand.
They can't.
Now we can speak. Sorry,
Okay.
we weren't able to unmute ourselves.
Okay, everyone's good now?
Thank
don't
you
know.
so much, Councilman Anthony.
Thank you.
All right, so is everybody with us? Did everyone get the introduction?
I did.
Yeah, we heard, but we're unmuted by the host.
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody can hear us. Thank you very much. Okay, Madam Clerk, well, first of all, I'd like to recognize our city solicitor, Ken Cheverini. I'd like to recognize Councilman Vargas and Gun Collins that are with us this evening, as well as City Treasurer Jim Lombardi.
Chairwoman, I haven't finished doing the roll call.
You didn't finish the
I
roll
did
call?
one, and then we
Okay.
couldn't
All
hear.
right, let's call the roll, please.
Chairwoman Ryan,
Present.
Vice Chairwoman Castillo,
Present.
Councilman Narducci. Absent. Councilwoman Anthony,
Present.
Councilman Taylor.
Yeah,
We have 4 present, 1 absent. We have a quorum.
I also see Councilwoman LaFortune is with us. Please let the record reflect that she has joined us.
So noted.
Anyone else? Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone. I'd like to first begin by having anyone who is presenting this evening from the administration be sworn in. We'll do that all at once on the item number 1. Madam Clerk.
Raise your right hands. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
I do.
Please state your names and titles for the record.
Lawrence Mancini, Chief Financial Officer of the City of Providence.
Diana Perdomo, Chief of Policy.
Sarah Silveria, Finance Director.
Crystal Lindbergh, Deputy Finance Director.
Should I begin?
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, first order of business, I'd like to get our exhibits into the record. So I have before us an 8-page document entitled Fact Sheet, the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds will deliver $350 billion for state, local, territorial, tribal governments to respond to the COVID-19 emergency and bring back jobs, dated May 10, 2021. It's an 8-page document. Let's call that Exhibit 1. May I have that motion? Vice
So
Chair,
moved.
may I have that motion? Motion
So
made by
moved.
Vice Chair Castillo, seconded by Councilman Taylor. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. So we have Exhibit 1. Then we have on a 20-page document entitled City of Providence State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds Policy and Procedures Manual. Again, it's a 20-page document. Let's call that Exhibit 2. May I have that motion, Vice Chair?
Taking a motion.
Motion made by Vice Chair Castillo, seconded by?
second.
By Councilman Taylor. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. We have Exhibit 2. Then we have a 12-page document entitled Building an Equitable, Resilient Recovery for Providence Mayor Alorza's American Rescue Plan Act Ordinance. Again, it's a 12-page document. Let's call that Exhibit 3. And Vice Chair makes that motion, seconded by
Second.
Councilman Taylor. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Okay. And last, we have a 313-page, appears to be a PowerPoint presentation titled Opera Second Ordinance, City of Providence Investment Budget 2022. Let's call that Exhibit 4. May I have that motion?
So move.
Motion
Second.
made by Councilwoman Castillo, seconded by Councilman Taylor. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Okay, that's all our exhibits, correct, Madam Clerk?
That is correct, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
Okay, awesome. All right, with that, I would just like to start us off by saying the purpose of this meeting tonight is essentially to lay the foundation for our discussion of the proposed remaining opera budget that is before this Finance Committee tonight, intended to help Providence rebound from this pandemic. As many of us know, the Opera Plan Act of 2021 provided $350 billion in emergency funds for eligible uses. The funding provides a once-in-a-generation source of funds that will truly make a transformational impact on the city of Providence. State of Rhode Island received $1.1 billion in opera dollars. Providence received $166 million. As many of you know, we moved quickly on the City Finance Committee, working in tandem with the administration, essentially got $42.8 million on the street to provide immediate relief. And that's exciting. I'm proud to say that Providence led the way in putting APRA dollars to work in meaningful ways. Our immediate need budget provided funding for investments in key priorities, including summer programming, early learning, free public internet access at our parks and our recreation centers, anti-violence, homeless intervention, street sweeping, sewer repairs, library funding, and relief for Providence's small businesses. The COVID pandemic has touched us all in one way or the other, some more than others, and we can't lose sight of that. And it's exciting that we're here now planning how to best utilize the remaining previous funds allocated to help our recovery. The committee intends to do its due diligence, and before this document gets out of committee, we will need to understand what the plan is basically for every line item in this budget. So just as we review every budget, we'll go through this one line by line. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize at this time the hard work that went into this budget, particularly the COVID Resiliency Task Force. We thank you for your work. Your work informs this budget. I want to thank my council colleagues who sponsored that and took part of it and participated in it. It was an exhaustive effort, and again, we appreciate that. So tonight, I think we're going to start out by inviting the administration to review the rules that govern the use of opera dollars. And with that, I'd like to ask Chief Mancini if he could take the lead to begin our discussion tonight. After Chief Mancini establishes that foundation, I'm going to ask Diana Padermo to go through the budget briefly, line by line. And then give the committee members an opportunity to ask any questions, and council people as well. But I think that'll fill the meeting tonight. I don't expect to get through all of this in detail tonight. We'll have subsequent meetings. So let's get going. Chief Mancini, help us out.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, members of the council. I too, Madam Chair, would like to echo your sentiments and thank the task force and all the members of both the council and administration that put the work in. This is a really outstanding document. Kudos to my colleagues in government, Ms. Padermo, who will testify shortly, in leading the way there. The role this evening, Madam Chair, and as we have shared with you and with your internal team, is exactly on point. We would review this evening the rules associated with the opera funds, Then there will be a general overview that included the policy manual, that a significant effort of work went into the policy manual, which is intended to be the plan that will be utilized in every instance associated with opera qualification and the opera spend as we move forward. Finally, we'll talk about regulations. And then you had asked specifically, my colleagues from finance will join us this evening, both Director Sarah Silveria and Deputy Director Krista Lindberg. And they will do a overview of the revenue loss provisions. They have become, in my opinion, they have become the specialized experts in that area, having given the prior testimony last spring. And Ms. Lindberg has been continuing with the regulation review and regulation refresh as the federal government issues those regulations regularly. And then finally, Madam Chair, I thought we had spoken about ultimately accepting the report as filed by the task force. With that, Madam Chair, Finance's role this evening will be to explain any of the opera revenue reduction calculations, and we're here to assist my esteemed colleague Diana Perdomo with any budgetary questions. But at this point, Madam Chair, if I may have your permission, I would ask that you have Ms. Perdomo begin this evening's presentation, as she has a significant amount of information that I think is worthy of this committee's review. And at that, I thank you for the privilege to join her with that. Thank you.
Actually, Chief Mancini, we'll go right to Diana, but I would like Exhibit 1 points out the fact sheet dated May 10, 2021. Would you like to walk through it? Basically, page 3 starts item number 1 through I think it's 7. Do you want to read that, or excuse me, 8 for the record, or would you like me to read it?
I don't have that directly in front of
Okay, you know what, why don't we start with that, with me just reading these items. Exhibit 1.
Go right ahead.
Do you want to put it up? Our clerk was going to put it up just for the ease of everyone's digestion here. Nice. Page 3.
Can everyone see? No, they can't see that yet.
You can't see it?
Not yet.
We cannot see it.
There we go.
We figured that out, Councilwoman. Thank you.
Okay.
Page 3, right?
Page 3. I think that's the best place. Slide down to number 1. Okay, so what you're looking at right now is the fact sheet, which basically provides the categories that are eligible for funding under this act. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I just want to lay the foundation for everyone's benefit. The first item is supporting public health response. And then page 4 is addressing the negative economic impacts caused by public health emergency. The third item is serving the hardest hit communities and families. Item 4 is, that's page 5 we're on, replacing lost public sector revenue. Page 6 is providing premium pay for essential workers. Page 7, investing in water and sewer infrastructure. Investing in broadband infrastructure is 7. And then 8 talks about ineligible uses. State and territories may not use funding to directly or indirectly offset a reduction in net tax revenue due to a change in the law. No recipient may use this funding to make a deposit into a pension fund. So those are the rules. That is made part of this meeting's agenda. It's Exhibit 1. If my committee or anyone wants to review it, that's the rules as to how these funds can be utilized. And that's that. With that, I would like to, at Chief Mancini's suggestion, invite Diana Perdomo to basically take us through the budget.
Chair, Mr. Lombardi has his hand up.
Who?
Mr.
Thank you.
Mr. Lombardi. Sorry, you have your hand up?
Thank you. Yes, Madam Chair, would it be possible, I don't know, Diana, do you have an electronic copy of these documents so that we could review them as we go?
Yes, well, I think the document, I'm sorry, Madam Chairman, thank you, Chairwoman, thank you so much for having me. Treasurer Lombardi, thank you for the question, and thank you to the council for having us today to present. Treasurer, so I think the document that the chairwoman is referencing is actually a public fact sheet from the Treasury website. And so that was not a material that we had shared. We had provided a link to the full Treasury site that goes through all of the rules, the details of the final rule, the interim final rule, the reporting compliance guidelines. And so all of that is available. I'm happy to point that back to the council so that you have reference of all these documents. The other material.
Hold on just a second. Mr. Lombardi, you're asking for this document so that you use it tonight? Is that what you want through this meeting?
We can follow along, yes.
Yes, okay. So I know my committee members it's been distributed to the committee. And it is a public document and it is made part of this package. Can I ask Gina Costa, our auditor, if she could send Mr. Lombardi, Treasurer Lombardi, a copy so that he can rely on that for this
Yes, I'm
evening's
forwarding
meeting?
it right now.
And any council person that's on this meeting should also get that as well. I didn't intend to measure the budget up against this document, but it is a foundational piece, and I can understand your value in having it as we go through this meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, Diana Padermo, why don't you take it away? You have the mic.
Thank you so much. So if the committee permits, I would like to have a few minutes for just to go over a brief explanation of the policies and procedures as it relates to ARPA and leading to the Schedule 2 submission. So as the chairwoman presented, the rules and regulations of the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, as you know, in March of 11th, 2021, the plan was signed by President Biden, first proposed in January. The package built upon many of the measures in the CARES Act from March 2020, except there were some additional provisions that provided for municipalities that were not initially eligible under CARES Act to gain direct relief and recovery funding through the federal government. I'll note that during the pandemic, the city worked with the state to leverage CARES Act funds and philanthropy to secure additional resources. But really up until this point of the American Rescue Plan Act funding, the city didn't really receive much in direct federal relief and recovery funding beyond CDBG and ESG funds. So we learned a lot during this time, how COVID impacted the community, the areas where needs were not being met, and worked the best of our ability to align as much aid as possible. I think you'll recall, we were quite innovative. We were able to, get well over 1 million meals out to youth and families with very little resources. We were really happy to hear that when the American Rescue Plan came along, the city would receive about $166 million. And I'll note that there are two incredibly important resources that I would love to share with the council and the public. And so I'm just going to share my screen really quickly. One of which builds upon the document, the exhibit one that you mentioned, Chairwoman. And so if you just give me one quick second. I'll run you through this. Okay. So can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. So all of the rules and regulations as they pertain to the American Rescue Act are hosted on the U.S. Department of Treasury website. This particular site goes over some of the uses of funds, as was already mentioned, the final rule detail, and also determining eligibility usages. I'll also note that another site that I would love folks to become very familiar with, if you're not already, is the City of Providence's Providence Rescue Plan. On this site, we're hosting all up-to-date information on all the work that we are doing in executing the plan and carrying out the resources that have been already obligated, And it has a whole host of information about the task force, the community engagement, and any resources or opportunities currently available to apply. The interim final rule was published in May 17th, 2021. And that really just provided some preliminary guidance on the use of the funds. I won't go over those as that was already mentioned and is hosted on the site here. Following that, it was in July of 2021 when the city went forward with the city's FY22 budget and included the Schedule 1 of the American Rescue Plan ordinance being passed, almost $43 million. And at that point, we got to work to program those funds and build systems of accountability to ensure that we were doing our work right by the intention of the American Rescue Plan and all of the guidance we were getting from the Treasury. But it wasn't until November that we received, it was November 15th, that the Treasury came out with the compliance and reporting guidance. This really set forward a lot of information in terms of what we needed to gather. So in our quarterly reports and the requirements for those reports to the federal government as we spend these funds. And then it wasn't until January 6th, actually, that the final rule came out. So we've learned a lot along the way and have been building the plane while we're flying it and have been in constant communication with the Treasury and various other institutions as well. I'll say that a number of people from the administration, from the finance team, our recovery office, et cetera, have been joining a number of sessions with national leaders working at the Department of Treasury, the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs, Bloomberg Philanthropies, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and the League of Cities and Towns. So before I get into some of the details of the investments themselves, I was hoping that I could take a moment to go over the policy and procedures that we've put into place. There's two really important critical things to think about. While the Treasury worked on the interim final rules for the American Rescue Plan, our task force worked to gain input from the community. The administration really worked on building systems of compliance, reporting, and accountability. We developed the City of Providence State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund Manual to guide the city departments and initiative leaders as they program ARPA funds. And the manual was developed by the city's procurement office, finance, and recovery office, and was reviewed by our compliance consultants. I'll note that I believe Jeff Stevens is an attendee in the waiting room. He is hired through iParametrics and has been contracted with the city to do our FEMA reimbursement work. And we extended our contract with him and our team to actually help us with compliance around the American Rescue Plan as well.
How is that being funded?
This is being funded through the administration line of the initial ordinance, the first Schedule 1 ordinance, the American Rescue Plan. So if I may, again, I will share my screen really quickly to just give you a quick overview of that document.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. Chairwoman.
Councilwoman Anthony?
I think people are in the waiting room. They can't get into this meeting or there's some sort of communication glitch. I just want to make sure that everyone's been able to get in or.
Thank you, Councilwoman. We'll have the clerk check. Is everybody?
Everyone who's supposed to be here is here.
Who will you identify that is not able to get in?
Is Angie here? The co-chair of the committee?
I don't see her on the attendee side. She would have received a panelist invite.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Okay, please continue. We can't hear you. Diana, you're muted.
Thank you. I'm so sorry.
I hope you didn't say anything really exciting.
No, not yet. But after 2 years of Zoom meetings, you think I'd get this right, and we're all still doing the problem.
No one has.
Okay, so I'm going to put up the manual we created and just go through that really quickly. This was submitted.
So this manual, for everyone's reference, is Exhibit 2 in your packet.
Yes, thank you. Let me put that up now. Okay, So the manual here goes through a lot of the similar information we just went through in the, around the background of the state and local fiscal recovery funds. It goes through the uses of eligibility, the rules associated, eligible costs and time frame, ineligible uses, pretty much all the stuff we just kind of went over. It also provides guidance around our uniform administrative requirements. This is a requirement among a lot of federal grant programs that we are adhering to. It provides background on the recovery team, who to contact for what issue. And then it goes a little bit into the task force work, references the report, the various meetings that occurred. We have hired a team to help support this work. We have a recovery specialist, a fiscal specialist, and a communications specialist who are all helping us make this engine run around ARPA. And we include the ordinance, of course, as referenced as anything to use American Rescue Plan funds have to be approved and be referred to in the approved ordinances. This also then goes into program initiation. It provides great guidance to departments, program directors, initiative leads as they're programming these dollars to think through under which category and how do I procure these services. So what this offers is a step-by-step mapping process as to how you procure a service or a good or a contract as we are according to the rules of the American Rescue Plan and also in accordance to the city's procurement guidelines. So it goes through the different categories, saying if it's centrally managed through the recovery office, something similar to the administrative funds, if it's something under a department, funds that will be managed by a department, or something that's said directly about a sub-grantee. So we note that in the ordinance, it's going directly to a sub-grantee. What is the process for that? It also outlines city procurement guidance around how to do these purchases, references who to get in touch with if you have questions about procurement, and just provides a really good detail on how to do this. I think there was a little confusion initially between the federal guidelines and the city procurement rules. And so we just want to make it really clear what would be expected. Outlines RFPs and how we go through purchase agreements. Really soup to nuts on how to execute the program, including a procurement compliance flow. Also, it references the requirements of subgrantees. I'm sure you all will be very interested in how we're going to ensure that as we're programming these dollars, that they are being used in the way intended and that we're reporting that regularly. The federal government requires that we do provide quarterly reports, and we're building this requirement into all of our contracts. In fact, all of our contracts reference this particular guide and explains all these requirements. So it goes into the monitoring requirements under the SLFRF, being those American Rescue Plan state and local recovery funds, subgranting reporting requirements, and payment process. We did create a template contract that adheres to all the requirements under ARPA that was vetted by our legal team, our compliance team, and was modeled after some other former or prior federal grants that we had received and how we manage this contract. So there's a lot of process going into ensuring our contracts were appropriate for this. Finally, we jump into how we actually pay things out. So beyond department reporting and the obligation there, we go through the process for putting payments out to pay these obligated funds and provide a workflow and how to close out the program. We are planning on hosting this document on ProvNet. We actually had a training in December for all department directors, so they would have these resources. And we are continuously revising it as we get more information from the federal government, and we'll continue to update and post the latest guidance.
Who is the manager? Who oversights all of this function, all of these functions?
Currently, it is me.
Just you?
Well, I am overseeing, yes, all of the planning associated with all of this and also the staffing underneath the American Rescue Plan.
So who has approved this procedure manual?
I have.
Has the solicitor's office seen the manual and approved the process and procedures and made sure it's in conformance with the opera rules? Has that happened?
The solicitor's
Solicitor?
office has reviewed this document in concert with our contract. So the contract template references this procurement manual, this guidance manual. And so the legal department reviewed that along with the contract.
Solicitor Shabarini? Are you with us, Solicitor? Can you attest
Yes,
to that?
Madam
for
Chair.
us? Have you reviewed this?
I myself have not, there are a staff of attorneys, as you know. I don't know who Diana maybe had referred it to.
Diana, who in the solicitor's office did you work with?
Yeah, actually, it was a team of 4 contract attorneys that work in the solicitor's office. So it wasn't just one of the attorneys, it was all of them. Essentially, we had created the template contract. They reviewed that. We created the template around the guidance. They reviewed that. They came all together and agreed upon the final document, the final contract template. And so it wasn't just one attorney. It was multiple.
Okay. Solicitor Shabarini,
Yes,
you want to follow up on that?
I will.
Do you have any
There is
follow-up
a,
comment?
no, I have none. There is a contracts unit that does review contracts individually, but because of the significance of this particular issue, the whole team apparently did.
Okay, so can you please report back to this committee? I'd like you to verify that this procedure manual went through appropriate vetting and all the contracts were reviewed and the rules and regulations and the guidance expressed in the manual, this manual comports with the federal regulations as well as state and local procurement guidelines. Could
Absolutely.
you please do that for me and report back to the committee? Great.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Diana Perdomo, did you have any other thoughts on that, or are you good with that? No?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, no, that I think that's wonderful. I'm glad
Okay.
to have them confirm it. I'm confident that the manual is accurate and complies.
Yeah, we just want to make sure.
Of course.
Okay. What else? What's next?
All right. Well, I'll just say that, in addition to so as I said, this manual is going to be up on our website. It's accessible with all of our contracts. We're doing trainings. We extended our contracts like parametrics. We also went through a competitive bid process and contracted strategic communication strategies to support our community engagement and planning. And then the one thing I will say about the ordinance that's being proposed, the Schedule 2 ordinance, is that has been entirely vetted by our compliance team at iParametrics as well. And each person in the administration responsible for each line item has been provided the treasury rules for each investment. So I'm going to transition a little bit more to how we got here. So I just want to take a quick moment and Madam Chair, I'm so glad that you acknowledged and thanked the task force for their work. I think that due to the tremendous considerable public input that we received, we feel really confident about the ordinance that's being presented to the council for consideration. The task force, and I won't get too into this because I know this is a deeper or a possible conversation for later on the agenda today, but the task force, was a joint initiative between the administration and the council. We brought 13 community members together and met weekly for 3 months. Together, we conducted community meetings, surveys, direct door knocking in the hardest hit zip codes, and we did lots of interviews. Through all of that, over 1,500 residents and business owners participated, and special attention was given to our city's neighborhoods that were most impacted by COVID-19. In fact, over half of the 1,111 survey respondents that we received were actually from the hardest hit zip codes, 02907 and 02909. As you know, the work culminated in a 70-page report with a series of recommendations. I won't get into that detail, but I will note that Oscar Mejia and I know we were trying to have Angie Ancoma, join the call, but I just want to thank them both for the work that they had done and seeing that through, and also special thanks to Councilwoman LaFrochin, who sponsored the resolution that put forward the task force that helped us get to this place as to where we are. So that was incredibly important to get all that amazing feedback. The report provides more detail, but what I would say is that our residents and business owners were pretty clear in how they wanted us to use their funds. And what was pretty amazing was that, the task force, through everything that they heard, was able to provide real critical guidance on how to best administer and plan for these funds. A couple of really important pieces I'll say is that the task force is very adamant to say that we make these spending decisions through the lens of racial equity, and not just centering on those hardest hit by COVID-19, but those who have been disenfranchised by structural racism and discrimination. And so in light of the disparate impacts of COVID-19 on vulnerable and frontline communities, we prioritize equity and resiliency through all funding categories identified in this ordinance. So, Madam Chair, would you like me at this moment to do a line-by-line description of each item? Okay.
I would, but before we move on to the budget, I just want to go back to this policy and procedure manual. I'm happy that the solicitor is going to be reviewing it to make sure we have our ducks in a row. I'd also like the auditor, Madam Auditor, have you looked at this? Have you seen this manual? Have you reviewed it?
Hi, Madam Chair. Yes, I have seen it, but I'm not in the position to do any legal opinion of it. So I would leave that up to the attorneys.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to review it as well. Yes. That's fine. So that's where that procedure manual is at this point. Please, Diana, please take us through the budget line by line.
Okay, so what the last exhibit presented was the building an equitable and resilient recovery for Providence. I could share my screen to go through that so you have something to look at, or would the clerk like to just put it up?
Well, actually, we have the budget in front of us. We have the ordinance. So I'd like to use the ordinance document, if that's okay.
Okay. Absolutely. Right. I don't have the current ordinance in front of me, but would you like, so could we put that up for the public to see while I go through?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, Madam Clerk, good suggestion.
I also want to quickly acknowledge that we see Angie Ancoma on the line. I know she was having trouble joining earlier. So hi, Angie.
Welcome, Angie.
So I'm sharing the actual ordinance.
Yes, please. So the clerk is putting the actual ordinance that's before this committee up on the screen, and that's what we're going to go through.
That's perfect. Okay. All right. I will start with the Art, Culture, and Tourism and Hospitality Fund of $7.7 million. So this category includes a number of different opportunities. For one, the arts, culture, and special events support. That includes support to Waterfire, PVD Fest, First Works for our annual PVD Fest, and $1.225 million for the management oversight of public space permits while augmenting staff support for special events through a production coordinator and professionalizing existing.
I'm sorry,
management
you got to
services.
slow down. You have to slow down, please. So what is that?
Okay.
Arts, culture, and special events support, 1.2 million. What's that about? Please slowly.
Yeah. So that 1.2 million is focused on ensuring that we have proper management and oversight of public space permits while augmenting staff support for special events. We're looking to hire a production coordinator and professionalizing existing and new event management services. Now, this would be done with ensuring that our special event support will be able to put some more resources out there with some additional administrative services. So this is entirely for that purpose. But it includes also support for events like water, fire. And then as you'll see, the second item on the ordinance, the PVD Fest producing partner First Works, that is also associated with that Alt Culture and Special Events Fund, but we want to call that out in support for PVD Fest.
So administrative support, event management services for water, fire, and PVD Fest.
And other special event supports, yes.
Okay, what portion of it is water, fire, PVD, and other?
So,
How does
right, so under the first, so we would say that the portion for PVD Fest is the 275 on the second line.
Oh, I see, okay.
And then if we were going to do continual support for water, fire would be under that 1.225 million. And then that would also be the administration and ongoing other types of support around special events in the city.
Okay, please continue.
Okay. The Cultural Facilities Fund. Now this is intended to support new construction, renovation of existing facilities and art spaces and buildings throughout the city. And this, I will say that throughout the community engagement process, this was something that was brought up a number of times, an investment in facilities, particularly for our cultural institutions like museums. So that's the intention of that. That will be an RFP program so that people can apply to gain access to those resources. Next line item is the public art to encourage tourism line. Now this is to develop Providence's profile as a public art destination by facilitating the installation of large scale murals across the city, temporary public art installations and in neighborhoods and residencies, and have transformative, transformer rec centers, parks, and other civic spaces. It's also a great opportunity to help provide some resources to our artists, our community, in carrying out these projects. The next line item is the marketing and tourism line. That is focused on, it includes $700,000 for the tourism marketing fund, in addition to $500,000, that's the second line item, for the Providence Warwick Convention and Visitors Bureau. This includes support for the Providence Warwick Convention and Visitors Bureau, which will continue to welcome trade shows, conferences, and other large-scale destination programs in collaboration with our Art, Culture, and Tourism Office. In addition, this will produce, facilitate, and build platforms for great artists to enhance its economic vitality and promote these activities through tourism marketing. May I proceed to business and economic development?
Only if you talk slower.
I'm so sorry. I tend to get a little nervous, and so I talk a little.
No need to be nervous. You're doing a great job. Just please
Thank
talk
you
a
so
little
much.
slower.
I will do
No
my
worries.
best. Okay.
Any questions before you can proceed? Committee members, any questions on this topic? I can't see any hands, so please continue.
Thank you. Okay, so $5.3 million to business and economic development. This is on top of the $7 million that was passed in the Schedule 1 ordinance for small business relief. So I think it's important to know that we are providing that direct relief to small businesses. So the COVID-19, the COVID-19 Adaptive Reuse Program. So the intention of that program is to encourage redevelopment of high COVID-19 impacted neighborhoods and commercial corridors by enhancing its visual aesthetics, which will lead to increased property values, tenant occupancy, and economic development and job creation. We are putting $3 million towards that program. We're proposing $3 million to that program. The second category, shared use infrastructure grant. We actually got a lot of input from the community on this type of program. It would essentially provide grants to block clubs, neighborhood associations, and nonprofit organizations to improve vacant or neglected properties and put them to use for small businesses, community gardens, farms, recreation areas, or pop-up shops. The effort can be accomplished through the direct support of neighborhood-based cooperatives, community development, corporations, and land trusts. And we're looking.
Is there a list of those? Is there a list of those properties?
I don't know that there is. I can't tell you off the top of my head. This was actually intended as an RFP for pre-planning and development processes. So that's why it's only $500,000. It's not about specific properties. But I'm happy to see if we can provide some of that information at a later date. I don't have that on top of me, available to me right now.
I just don't know how you sized that if we don't know what vacant properties we're trying to address. So I'll wait for additional information on that. You don't have to give me that now. Please continue.
Okay, and then the last part of this section being proposed is a $1.5 million investment in workforce development. This would be an improvement of the American Jobs Center. Essentially, we're looking to set up in partnership with the Polaris MEP Jane Arc program, the Department of Corrections Employment Triage Services, also Rhode Island Hospitality Association, and an IT training hub program. So this will offer an extension of programs that aren't currently available through our Workforce Solutions program. Essentially, the restrictions on the funding currently available to them has to make it under white WIOA compliance, and these funds actually allow us to do more training opportunities with more flexibility and more populations. So the intention was put to $1.5 million of workforce development to COVID-19 impacted individuals.
Okay. Questions, committee members, council members? Please continue.
Okay. So city services and infrastructure. The first item on the list, cybersecurity and information technology investments. So for cybersecurity, we want to ensure the city is prepared to respond to any cybersecurity incident, breach, and/or inquiry investigation by a department, and that we comply with federal and state mandates while identifying and mitigating unnecessary risks, including city cyber insurance. So we're looking to make an information tech investment along with better securing our protocols around cybersecurity. We're looking to staff tools to manage the ARPA funds also in the tech investment. The idea would be to help us manage our budgets and tracking and payments and coordinate this and update some of our programs. We also want to establish a public portal to highlight projects and budget payment details. So that would be all associated with that. $2.5 million. In addition, in that line item, we have carved out another $500,000 of support to IT infrastructure for public safety. That would be done in concert with the city's crisis response and justice reform intervention. The Parks and Recreational Capital Investment Fund. That fund is investments in parks and recreation centers throughout the city of Providence that will continue to support outdoor activation of public and accessible spaces. Our Parks Director has a number of priority projects that she's putting forward that would certainly eat up that $2 million.
Do we have the list of those projects?
Yes, so one thing I should have mentioned, and thank you, Madam Chair, for adding it as Exhibit 4, I believe, the presentations that we provided. Now that 300 and something odd, long document. So that essentially is a background and detail in a PowerPoint presentation on all of these line items. So that document does go over the types of projects that Parks is proposing. And I hope that you will invite them at a later date to even give a more in-depth presentation to answer more questions that aren't clarified in the PowerPoint.
We will, and this is a pretty robust document here, and I appreciate it. I would just wonder if you can reproduce it for us and put page numbers on it.
Yeah, so it's intended as an electronic document, but because of its size, we were unable to email it properly. So it actually links. If you look at it, the clerk could actually circulate the document, the PDF. You could actually click on the table of contents, and it'll take you to each program. But we could certainly put page numbers and make it formatted easier for you because it is a lot.
So for us to digest this and talk about it in a committee, it's very difficult. It is a robust document, but it would be very helpful if you could page it for us.
Okay.
Or for me and in the committee. Okay, continue.
Okay.
So the list of projects are in that document. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Okay,
they
so
are.
when we have Parks come in, they'll go through that. Okay,
Absolutely. And then the last investment in that category is regarding activating open spaces in downtown qualified census tracts, putting $8 million. Now, this is an economic stabilization investment into downtown, including Water Place Park and the rink downtown, the skating rink. This is improvements for climate resiliency, accessibility, and open space activation. And this investment would provide much needed services and amenities downtown. So that's the intention with that $8 million.
Sure.
Sustainability.
Councilwoman Anthony's got her hand up. Councilwoman Anthony, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you so much. Just on that, I just wanted to go back to the activating the, can you scroll back up to the activating the open spaces in downtown? Is that specifically for Kennedy Plaza?
So it's actually more specific to the downtown area. It's not just Kennedy Plaza. We're looking at making the space more, accessible to the public. That's more of a gathering space. So there's more of a center downtown. So it includes the rink and Water Place Park. There's a whole host of projects associated. And in the presentation documents that we provided, the planning department also put forward a detail of what that is.
Okay, so that is part of what has been discussed in the revisioning of Kennedy Plaza, then some of that, all of it,
Some of
or
it,
some
yes.
of it?
It's a portion. It's a portion of it.
Can you tell me what portion? What is the portion?
So my understanding of the project is that they're focusing on the area under the big shade and the place closer to the park. It would not involve any of the transportation areas of downtown, but it would focus on the parks and Water Place Park and the rink. So those are the areas that the investments would focus on.
Okay, so that is then the total amount is for the plan for Kennedy Plaza, then is what you're saying.
Portions of that plan, yes, exactly. It wouldn't be enough to put forward for the whole plan, but portions of the plan, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then following that, okay, thank you. For sustainability, the other side of that is about $6 million in improving downtown spaces to make them more climate resilient. So this is about providing more shade, making it cooler downtown, putting permeable spaces to mitigate flooding. So permeable concrete, or I'm not the planning person, so I'm not always good with the language, but there's certain permeable materials that help absorb water better, so there's minimal flooding. So this is all about improving and putting in investments to complement the work that is being done in the downtown area. I'll add that the resiliency infrastructure and frontline communities, the $3 million being proposed, that is specific to more frontline. So essentially the Office of Sustainability is looking to put forward grant opportunities for people to be able to make some improvements to properties that are in alignment with climate goals.
Could you explain that a little bit more?
Absolutely. So the idea is that we want to ensure I'm sorry, I think someone's not muted on the line. I'm hearing some.
Can everybody mute who's not speaking, please? So to avoid. And Councilman Anthony, you have your hand up. Do you have another question, or are you all set?
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay. Please continue, Diana.
Yes, okay, no problem. Okay, so the resiliency infrastructure and frontline communities, that is intended to ensure a low carbon future that centers those most impacted by climate change. So the idea is that we're going to leverage ARPA funding to help overcome some technical and financial barriers for low to moderate income homeowners and nonprofits to be prepared for climate change. We'll be making investments in their homes or facilities that will help them save money and transition their buildings and vehicles to be low carbon and climate resilient, in addition to helping the city move towards the city's climate justice goals. The last investment noted under sustainability is the stormwater and sewer additional $3 million. We did just adding that in the Schedule 1 ordinance, $3 million were allocated to stormwater and sewer repair. And this would be an additional $3 million on top of that initial investment. The intention here is to improve the overall health of the city's waterways and water quality to create recreation opportunities, swimming, boating, fishing, and develop a data-driven asset management approach to sewer infrastructure and maintenance plan for grease, tree roots, inflow, infiltration, and maintain or replace existing sewer infrastructure to serve the city for centuries into the future. In addition, we're
There's
hoping to
$3 million,
satisfy some
I
outstanding.
think there's $3 million in the CIP left for sewers. Is this in addition to that? Those funds?
I do not want to speak out of turn. I can't speak to the CIP investment.
Chief Mancini or Finance Director Silverio, can anybody offer guidance on that? It seems like the sewers need a lot more money than what we've seen come through the council. So what's going on there? Is there $3 million left in?
Madam Chair, I would think that any appropriation under the ARPA Act is in addition to what was considered under the CIP, bearing in mind that the CIP amount was created almost 2 years ago when the bond funding was taken. So I think this is in addition to, but I would be happy to confirm that with the Public Property Director Roberts, and I will pass that along to the internal auditor.
And then the amount that is actually needed to address our sewer system? Is this hopefully inept, or, I mean, I think it's a bigger problem than $3 million will help. What is the $3 million for?
We have been under a consent decree associated with stormwater and stormwater drainage, and over time, those costs do escalate. And so I think under a more recent appraisal of that project, I think this was expected that this could expand the scope of stormwater and sewer repair in addition to what was already appropriated under the CIP.
So we're just addressing our consent order, not doing any proactive sewer repair. Is that correct?
I believe it does include both.
Okay, so we'd like to see how that breaks out. Councilwoman Anthony, do you have a question?
I have several questions, and also I'd like to share your concern. I think this 3 million for it, especially if you're looking at stormwater, I assume that's the consent, and then the sewer, it seems woefully inadequate to even figure out exactly what the severity of our situation is. So I'm this has been my one issue with this process. I feel that there wasn't adequate information provided to the committee on the severity of our situation, and I really share the chairwoman's concern that this is just woefully inadequate, especially when you're doing stormwater and sewer repair. The other question I have is, that was really a statement, but my question is, again, improving and protecting downtown open spaces. Is that also for I'm just trying to get some clarity on that 6 million. Can you tell me what that's for?
Yes, so I think for details, please reference the presentations that were sent over, because the planning department was able to, and with Parks, actually put together a detail on what that $6 million investment would be towards. But I'll say briefly, it is associated with that plan, but the intention really is more focused on sustainability. So we're looking at ways, taking components of the plan, but really amplifying them to be more focused on ensuring that we're not having more flooding downtown, and it's cooler downtown in the summer, and there are places for people to go when we have adverse weather. So it is in complement to the KP plan, but it's more about providing shade, cooling spaces, impermeable pavement to manage stormwater and things of that sort. But I do think that Bonnie, our planning director, would be happy to come and speak to that along with Wendy.
I would find it really helpful. I really appreciate that explanation. It feels to me like, I think there's some improvements for Kennedy Plaza that were presented in the plan for the visioning plan. And it seems to me that there are pieces of this, of this ARPA funding that's specifically going to be used to implement that plan. And it just seems like it should be a little clearer in these documents. What is going to be, I understand the resiliency issue with the river flowing through and flooding from that, but when you're talking about the, cooling areas and stuff like that, I think that goes back to the features in the Kennedy Plaza plan. I just really would, for clarity's sake, like to know exactly what money is being spent from the ARPA funds to on the plan to improve Kennedy Plaza.
Councilwoman, so this tonight is an introduction. It's kind of identifying things that we need to delve deeper into. We're going to have the departments, we're going to invite the department directors in to talk about the specifics, and I think that will help give you the clarity that you're looking for, or give you an opportunity to delve deeper and question on those topics. Will that work for you?
It will.
So what I'm basically doing is just asterisking on a few of these line items for questions we need to pose to directors when they get before us on these topics. And I would invite my committee members and council members to do the same thing. And please ask me if you have a particular item that you want to delve deeper into. I certainly will respect your requests. Councilman, is that okay? Is that satisfying?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you so much.
Okay. I see Councilman Guncalls has his hand up.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I'd like to also echo some of those remarks. I think it would be great to have specifics on what's going to be invested downtown, specifically when we think about the Kennedy Plaza plan. So that's something that I just want to be on the record about. And just more broadly, I don't know if it's appropriate to ask this question right now, but there's about $14 million allocated towards downtown. We've got $8 million and then $6 million under the categories of city services and infrastructure and sustainability. And obviously, we're going to need to invest significantly more resources when it comes to infrastructure and stormwater management across the entire city. I'm just curious as to, who specifically, perhaps on the task force, was championing this. And, because I've listened to those meetings and I don't recall anyone saying, let's invest, $14 million to address infrastructure downtown. And of course, this is in my ward. Theoretically, me and my constituents should be very happy about that. But I think there are lots of needs in our neighborhoods. And I just hope that we're not kicking the can down the road on critical infrastructure that needs to happen in all of our neighborhoods. And we're not, and instead allocating, huge swath of these resources directly downtown. So, I guess my question is, and Diana's here, can you tell us a little bit more about the $14 million that's being proposed towards downtown infrastructure and why the choices to invest those dollars downtown as opposed to in our neighborhoods? And can you speak specifically as to, who from the task force was championing all this infrastructure for downtown as opposed to some of our neighborhoods?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So the intention of the amount of resource into one area is really similar to what you're saying, Councilman. We don't have that many resources. I think when this first came up, $166 million seemed like so much money. And when you speak to the community, they also recognize that as being a lot of resources. As you dive into projects, you come to realize that $166 million really only partially funds a lot of initiatives and opportunities, but doesn't go all the way. All of the opportunities we're presenting in front of you, we are looking at other ways to resource them as well. In the presentations provided, there's actually a slide within each of these line items that goes into what other funding sources we're looking to complement. And so that's something we're working really hard on. And then especially now with the infrastructure bill that's come along and the number of opportunities available there from the federal government, we are applying and out there getting ready. We just got the schedule of the number of opportunities to come that are opening and looking to leverage those resources to ensure that we can plug in any additional infrastructure funding gaps that we have. The concentration in one location versus spreading it out really is about thinking about what we can accomplish in a short period of time and what can be done in a way that really uses these dollars as effectively as possible, and what will have impact. Now, I won't speak too specifically on like the intentions of the task force. The way that we set up the feedback from the community was really we asked folks to tell us how they spent $100 according to some categories, and they budgeted a much smaller amount for infrastructure and sustainability than other areas such as housing and homelessness, and in arts and culture and racial equity. There was a huge interest in those other areas. So I think in terms of how we were prioritizing investments, we were looking at the recommendations of the budget items from the community and trying to right fit the appropriate investment under those categories that met also the feedback we were getting from the community. Throughout the pandemic, I will say we had a lot of issues in the downtown area, particularly because there was not access to an open public restroom. And that created a number of public health and sanitation issues. And so I don't think it's too far off for us to talk about how do we keep downtown clean, how we keep it climate resilient, and how do we invest in it in areas so that it's a place that people want to go to and have a center that is welcoming for everyone across the city. So it's not about like putting investments in different specific wards, although we are doing that through or proposing that through our parks investments. We're really trying to say, let everyone in the city enjoy a space that is welcoming for everyone in the city. So that was the intention. We were trying to take the feedback from all of the public, the way we asked the survey, and right fitting the budget to present this to you.
Yeah, and I very much appreciate that response, and I think that was well articulated. I also, if I may, Madam Chair, I want to start off by thanking the administration and the task force chaired by Mr. Mejias and Mrs. Bannerman and Coma for their hard work in helping to put this proposal together. So thank you. There's a lot in here that is wonderful. I appreciate the proposed ordinance spending on housing, youth and community, the racial and equity initiatives and resources to impact those who have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. I think there's a lot of great stuff in here that I think we can talk about a little bit later. But, I would venture to say that folks want to see dollars invested directly in their neighborhoods as opposed to downtown. Perhaps I'm off base on that. And I'm not discounting the enormous, impact that it would have on downtown for the entire city. But there are dire infrastructure needs across our entire city. So I think that's something that we should certainly revisit throughout this process. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I just want to remind the committee and remind my council colleagues that I only asked Diana to provide an overview very brief. She doesn't have the benefit of having her department directors here to answer in detail. So let's try to stay on topic here if we can. Okay. Your comments are great and we greatly appreciate it. And those discussions need to be had. And we need to have the directors present when we're having those conversations. Councilman Taylor, you have your hand up.
Yes, just briefly, I echo Councilman Goncalves' concern about the 14 million downtown. But my other question would be, do we know if the state is putting any of their money into downtown?
Can you answer that question, Diana?
Yeah, so we are certainly working with Rob Janetsky and the state's ARPA equivalent office to, sort of the counterpart to me in this way. And we've provided actually a list of all of our CIP plans. We've also provided a list of proposed projects for community centers in particular. We've also shared these plans with them. We're trying to collaborate where we can, where resources are coming in. We've heard a considerable amount of interest. I will let Bonnie speak to the specifics on what resources are available to complement the downtown investments. I'm not best suited to do so, but I will say that we're having lots of conversations on trying to align resources because like I said before, I don't think $166 million is really nearly as much as we had hoped it would be and would go as far if we don't actually leverage the state and additional federal funds available.
Are you all set, Councilman Taylor?
I guess there's an answer in there somewhere, but okay, thank you.
So, Diana, what I think, first of all, thank you, Councilman Taylor, you raised an important topic, and it's leveraging these dollars. It's critical that we leverage these dollars. And I know we want to touch as many people and do as much as we can with these funds, but if we're spreading them too thin, and we're not taking advantage of leveraging these funds, we're doing the city a disservice. So I think next time around, I'd like to see a presentation of this budget with all leveraged dollars. What is the state putting in? What other dollars are being leveraged to make sense of the expenditures here? I think that will help answer some questions. And maybe that was a good question, Councilman. I appreciate that. Do you think you could do that, Diana?
Yeah,
For us?
certainly.
Okay.
It'll take us
And
some
I'm
time
sure
because
that-
we're still building that, but yes, I'd be happy to
well,
come back.
we want to see it pretty quickly though, so we need it built a little faster, particularly the accountability of the funding components.
Yeah, I think that, I'm so sorry, Madam Chair.
That's okay. Continue. Go right ahead.
I do think that, so the last slide on all the presentations that we provided to you do show which pools of funding we're going after at the moment or what is available to us. So that's a preliminary view to let you know where we're talking and who we're lining up with to help leverage additional resources.
So that'll be a deeper discussion. Thank you. Councilwoman LaFortune, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, my council colleagues for these really great questions. And I just want to say to Council Gonsalves' point about, the discussions during the committee, and also Councilman Taylor and Anthony, there has been discussions. One of the things that the committee really talked about is ensuring that there's oversight and accountability. We also spoke about making sure that we're maximizing these dollars by leveraging our partnership with our state, particularly around housing and funding allocated towards infrastructure. And I think one of the things to think about and I also agree with you, Councilman Gonsalves, we were all champions around investing in our neighborhoods, investing in the communities, to support initiatives that directly benefits the residents of Providence. And some of these initiatives and investments also include transit. So I think one way to think about it, and it's going to be important for the administration to present us with more detailed plans and how they're going to use that funding allocated towards downtown. If it's towards improving transit, which we know is a major issue in our city and state, particularly around the downtown area, improving the transit, increasing ridership, making it more safe. I think that's a way that funding can be used as long as there's oversight and there's accountability measures that is also implemented. But having a bit more detail, I think, will be more useful. But I just want to say that there has been discussions, and one of the things that we did push is for the administration to work directly with the state around some of these allocations to ensure that we're maximizing those dollars, and it's also sustainable. And again, going back to this, environmental and sustainability allocations, there is some infrastructure funds that came in, and how do we also utilize some of those funds to address some of our infrastructure concerns, including storm water and sewer repairs, because that is a major issue in our city right now. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Are you all set, Councilwoman LaFortune? You're all set?
I certainly am. Thank
Great.
you.
Okay, thank you. All righty. Councilwoman Castillo just popped up. Councilwoman, Vice Chair Castillo? You're muted. You're muted, Councilwoman.
I'm sorry, saying to my colleagues, I see the budget, I see they invest a lot of money in downtown area, but what about when I see the budget, I see the community center, library and stuff, they got like less money, and that's a thing go inside that our community. The community center, that's is really important because that's make a program for the people who live in the community. So this is my concern, and I support, everything my colleagues say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Okay, Diana, Councilwoman Anthony, you have your hand up. Is that an old hand or a new hand?
It's an old hand, quite literally.
Oh, stop it. Don't you be saying that.
Oh,
Okay.
stop it.
Diana, please.
Chairwoman.
Oh, Councilman Vargas, I see your hand.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman. Hi, everybody. I don't see any money in this budget for the communities. Like I am with Councilman Gonzalez. We supposed to get some money for the taxpayers, because the taxpayers are the one who's getting hurt. If we start working into downtown area, make this, make that, and we don't give nothing to the community, we don't bring nothing to the schools, we don't bring nothing to the sidewalks, fixing up sidewalks, fixing up parks and the communities, we're not doing nothing with this ARPA money. This money is to give it back to the businesses and to the people of the wards, the people who are working very hard and to pay the taxes for the city. That's what I'm looking for. It's very great that to create a lot of new things in downtown. But ask me how many people from here, from my ward 15 goes to downtowns. They don't want to go there because they will go get a ticket, especially around the city hall. If they go to pay taxes, they walk out with $100 ticket. That's not fair. And so let's look the solution, how we can get more money for the taxpayers, for the community outside the center, outside downtown. Thank you.
Well said, Councilman. Thank you. Okay, Diana, please continue.
Okay, happy to. I'll proceed to the housing and homelessness investments. I'm really excited about this. The state of Rhode Island does not have a line item for building affordable housing. We keep going out to bond. The city does have an affordable housing trust, but we've never invested this much in housing before, to my knowledge. The American Rescue Plan proposal you put in front of you has $28.1 million proposed for housing and homelessness initiatives. So of that total, I'll go through an overview. So the first category, affordable housing development, this $17 million is intended as an increase of funding to go to the Providence Housing Trust to gap finance affordable housing production. The second
I'm
item
sorry,
there,
could you please repeat that? I didn't understand what you just said. Please repeat that.
yes, so it will be $17 million that would be transferred to the Affordable Housing Trust. I'm sorry, the Providence Housing Trust. So it'd be a PRA transfer, and that will go to gap finance any affordable housing production. So
into the existing housing bond, this is an additional 17 million.
Yes.
Did you think about taking out the bond?
I think
continue. Please continue. I'm sorry.
So it's okay. The next line item, $3 million to home repair program. This is to expand the rehab lending in parallel with more proactive code enforcement. So we're looking at possibility of certificate of a habitability pilot and aging in place initiatives. So this would be available for $3 million to expand those types of programs and opportunities.
So these are new programs.
So this would be in complement to existing programs, but to have a little bit more flexibility. I also understand that there's an interest in talking through, and I know this still needs to be planned, and I would appreciate, I think this would be a really good conversation to have during this presentation. But there's an interest in looking at the viability of units and whether they are habitable, and hoping that improvements can be made to those units and housing units so that they can be up to code and that people can rent them safely.
Okay. We're gonna have to talk more on that one. Continue.
We also are putting out an affordable and alternative housing programming RFP program. So we'll be issuing an RFP for community-driven proposals to serve impacted households in hardest hit neighborhoods. This is probably the category that is more creative and unique from all the other housing investments. We heard a lot from the public engagement process of different types of programs and wanted to offer a space there to resource those to help support communities impacted by the pandemic and to ensure that we can use unique programs. I say as an example, but not as a specific thing. We had heard regarding organizations that were helping elderly house in place by renting their spare bedrooms. And so you could have like a college student, rent a spare bedroom and help keep the housing for that elderly individual to be more affordable for them. So seeing those kind of unique opportunities and creating an option for people to apply for that or for an organization.
Is that an
like
existing program or that's a new program?
That would be new for the city to support. But it could be that we would support programs that we currently fund through other initiatives to expand those, but this would be an RFP process. So we would have people apply, organizations apply, and we would select them for what is most competitive.
Okay. What's next?
The next line item in the budget is the expanding of rapid rehousing. So this is to sustain increased levels of rapid rehousing investment for 18 to 24-month rental assistance paired with case management for 2 to 3 years to expedite client transition from shelter into housing. And this would be something that we would do in concert with the Consolidated Homeless Fund and in partnership with the state. We're also proposing an addition. Oh, I'm so sorry. Did I skip one? I think I did. Yes, I'm sorry. I skipped one. So we also are putting forward an additional $1 million to our emergency housing solutions. This is to work with partners to expand non-congregate shelter models, diversion and housing navigation programs to add capacity to homeless service systems. You may recall from the first ordinance, we used our first spend under this category to support Crossroads in developing a diversion program and in support of the expansion of the state hotel program as well, and created more housing availability or more immediate shelter options for people who needed shelter. The next line item, $600,000, would be to continue the successful right to counsel pilot that we've been doing to provide no-cost legal aid services and to prevent displacement. This program has been incredibly successful, especially with the rental assistance that's been going on throughout the state. So the combination of having legal counsel and also having some funding available to help mitigate people getting pushed out of their housing and come to a more reasonable solution in terms of them being able to stay longer and have that agreement done with the tenant and landlord. The last line item here, $2 million, we're proposing for permanent supportive housing. This is of high need. The idea is that this would be a PRA transfer to earmark for development of permanent supportive housing, which is essentially deeply affordable housing that is paired with ongoing social services. Should I continue?
Who is gonna manage those deep subsidies?
So all of these programs will be, so the people in the city who are going to be overseeing this work will mostly be in the planning department and the community development, division. So Emily Friedman actually sits with a state group around the Consolidated Homeless Fund. And so for those funds, they'll be doing in concert with the RFPs with the state, although the funds will come from the city and we will be able to do our own selection. We usually try to coordinate in these efforts so that we can line up the resources for programs that are available, making sure that like if the state's going to fund a project and it just needs to go a little further, we can help support that. I'm sorry, I think that was your question. Like did I answer it? I'm so sorry. Is there another part?
Well, in a broad term, I've got actually another question for you. When you started speaking about housing and homelessness topic, you said that you were really excited that the city had so much funds for housing because the states didn't. So could you explain what you explain that a little bit more. They don't have any housing funds in their opera dollars?
Well, no, I'm speaking to prior to the CARES Act funds and prior to the American Rescue Plan dollars.
Okay.
And I'm speaking about, so my prior experience before coming to the city, I was working for the United Way, and we led with a number of coalition community partners on 3 housing bond campaigns, and I participated in one of them. And, it was just always painful to go year after year to bond for housing when we knew that we weren't keeping up for production. So, and those bond amounts were so small at a statewide level. And so $28 million just in the city for all of these initiatives seems quite large in comparison to what we were advocating for not that long ago at a statewide level. So to me, personally, from my prior experience, that it seems exciting of an investment. And I do think that the state is also, I know Governor McKee mentioned a pretty significant investment into housing production as well, and housing affordability. So this is going to be huge for the state. That's a lot of money that will be going in this direction. And
that is important, and leveraging here is critical. That's why I asked. I just asked for clarification. I see Councilman Anthony's hand is up.
Thank you so much. I just had a follow-up question. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Going back to the Community Development Division of Planning that will be doing the oversight, what committee did you say that Emily Friedman was on?
So I don't want to misspeak the name of the committee, but they work together with the Consolidated Homeless Fund. And so it is the cities throughout the state that receive CDBG or ESG allocations that go to affordable housing. And they coordinate together. So any sort of like the emergency shelter, awards that go out, Emily sits on that committee and reviews with the state. So she would be able to bring in that knowledge to be able to, help them select in coordination with where the state direction of dollars are going.
We're going to have a whole night on housing, Councilwoman Anthony. So that'll help.
I'm sure we are,
really
and it's
need to
exciting.
do that.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you so much.
Great.
Very exciting.
Thank you. Please continue, Diana.
Okay, so the next category of funding, racial equity. This was something that was spoken about considerably on the community engagement process. Also, the ARPA itself speaks to a lot of the inequities occurred prior to COVID and how COVID exacerbated some of these inequities. So we are proposing a significant investment in this category, a total of $15 million. Now, the first portion, the COVID-19 Equities Program, the idea with this is to establish an independent commission with appointees made by elected officials, including the mayor and the council, with requirements to include people who are experts in COVID-19 inequities and racial equity, to develop a budget for ARPA funding to address reducing the wealth gap between Providence residents and its various neighborhoods. So we are putting $10 million to the implementation of the plan and proposed guidance from the independent commission. And so we're looking to establish that commission relatively soon to be able to provide us with that guidance. The next line item, the facilities development program.
This isn't an existing program. Is it the intention that the commission would build the plan?
Yes.
So there is no plan.
Well, I will say that, of course, informed through the city's various research and processes, and also through the guidance of the American Rescue Plan, we have a lot of ideas. But we think that because this is so focused on racial equity and it really requires community input and people focus on that issue and have a lot of knowledge to it, we think it's best that we have those public conversations and vet through the options and then see how we can implement this. The opportunities could be really varied. It could be an expansion of, technical assistance to BIPOC community-led organizations, or it could be some sort of other sustainable support that would really grow the wealth of that community. So we don't want to prescribe at the moment what that would be without having those conversations.
We're going to need more detail on that to be able to justify that. Not that there isn't a need, it's just we need more shape to it. Okay, what else?
Direct relief to Providence, yes. The direct relief to Providence residents. So this is $500,000 that would be utilized in concert or in addition to the city's guaranteed income pilot that we've been running. And so the idea with this could be twofold. We could actually extend the existing pilot for an additional 6 months with the current cohort to give them that security a bit longer, or we can alternatively create a new program that would offer $500,000 or $500 a year for about 75 people for an entire year. So we're vetting that those two opportunities, but that is the intention, to provide direct cash assistance to Providence residents. The next line item for facilities development program. So this is actually an investment in project design, business planning, and community, and also a couple of community charrettes. There's a couple of properties, 2 key facilities in particular, that we are looking at within the city that support propelling upward mobility in the BIPOC community. So we're interested in seeing how we can utilize those spaces. The 2 that have been discussed to date are the Urban League and 25 Bow Street.
Oak Street?
Bow.
Bow. Okay. Thank you. Councilwoman Anthony, you have your hand up? Okay, please continue, Diana.
Okay, so youth and community investments. The first category under that fund is the justice reform piece. So the goal of this program is to invest in long-term proactive services that provide Providence residents with needed support, and really to unburden the Providence Police Department and the Providence Fire Department with calls for service that do not require their intervention, or allow them to focus on emergency high priority calls. This will hopefully reduce and eliminate unnecessary arrests and involvement in the criminal legal system. And this fund will support the expansion of existing co-response model and implementation of a larger scale crisis response program, while also looking to support a licensed restoration clinic and develop a legal defense fund for residents. So that $3.75 million would be for those multiple initiatives. And the biggest chunk of this would be a continuation of the work that I know the council had heard, oh gosh, was it like last summer or 2 summers ago now, with regard to models like Cahoots and the Dallas Star program. The city's been working on with the Providence Center and with Family Service of Rhode Island to devise a new planning process for us, and we're moving into implementation. So that's how we'll use these funds. The anti-violence investments, that's $2 million to increase on top of what we had passed, was passed in the first ordinance, to 3 critical programs. One is a citywide mentoring program that we have recently selected Mentor RI to lead, and to actually work with subrecipients to expand a number of mentoring opportunities for Providence youth. This also would be an expansion of our year-round jobs program for youth, and also ongoing training in de-escalation anti-violence strategies. Providence Promise program, that is a $2 million investment to Providence Promise for college savings programs. So this would be 529 plans for our youngest residents, to help them provide that direct support so that they could have that foundation for their future. The $470,000 put forward here is to continue our Providence Talks program with Federal Hill House and expand over the next couple of years. The program has been running through the pandemic and has shifted its model to be responsive, and we're looking to continue to support that critical program that really helps connect language and interaction between parents and their very young children, and give parents the opportunity to engage with other adults as well. The pre-K and early learning infrastructure fund of $2.5 million. This is an expansion of the program we currently run with LIST, although we are thinking creatively of other ways to utilize the resources. So essentially it would go to improving infrastructures for childcare facilities, whether they be centers or family-based providers, at-home providers. And we're also exploring whether the city can utilize its existing buildings, recreation centers, for example, that can be expanded and right-fitted, or even community centers that currently have childcare that can take advantage of some of these resources and improve the quality of the space. The Providence Community Library investment of $500,000, that's an additional spend from what we put forward in the first ordinance. And this would be to continue to expand hours and ensure that the space, the Providence Community Library, is available for the various community services that they provide. And they were really critical throughout the pandemic in terms of a whole host of information that was available, where a lot of other places people couldn't turn to. For the 200
community libraries are there?
I'm sorry?
How many community libraries are there?
Oh,
What's the
goodness.
number? Doesn't
I
seem a
don't-
lot.
It's
Doesn't seem like a
not.
lot of money. Yeah.
No, so I mean, I could share with, and I know that the presentation Hana Khan would provide, they've been giving us reports, and we have the proposal on the first spend and what that was looking like. This is really more about expansion of hours. And so I think the first spend of 500,000 gave them the expansion for 1 year. This would allow them to continue to expand hours for an additional year or two. So that's really a big part of it, to keep their libraries open longer.
So I see some hands up. Thank you, Diana. I'm going to go with Councilwoman Anthony.
Yes, thank you so much. I'd like just to go up to the justice reform line. So it seems to me that there's quite a few things in that line item. I was surprised that the diversion program is in there, because I've been very interested to hear where we are with that and how that's evolving. So I'm just saying that I just would hope that we're going to be breaking that out in detail in terms of what's being allocated for what.
Absolutely, Councilman. In the presentation back, the slide decks that I sent, the 300 and some
313.
Yes, there is a presentation there that's been done with our Healthy Communities Office, the Policy Office, and Public Safety, that outlines how that plan will be done. And it also, talks even specifically of the other line items. We talked about licensed restoration clinics. There'll be some more information on that, in addition to the legal defense fund for residents. So that's all detailed in the presentation. And I know that team will be very eager and happy to share with you. They're really proud of the work they've been doing.
All set, Councilwoman Anthony? You
I
good?
am, thank you.
Okay, Councilman Goncalves.
Thank you, Chairwoman Ryan. Diana, can I get a copy of this slide deck by any chance? I'm still.
But it's an exhibit.
Okay,
It's an
yeah.
exhibit. Not going to be able to get into it tonight. So.
Okay, yeah, no worries.
Make sure you get it. And
okay, well.
Hopefully it'll have pages on it.
Yeah, well, I want to commend several things here. I appreciate the $3 million, going back a little bit, the climate resiliency investment in frontline communities. You mentioned the 28 million to address affordable housing and homelessness. Regarding these youth and community investments, the expanding of pre-K, I also want to commend the $2 million to Providence Promise, which is a great organization. And the 529 college savings is a long-term investment in our children. I say that as an educator, and obviously, NYC Kids Rise is a similar organization in New York in a much bigger market, but they began giving every kindergartner $100 in a 529 college savings account, I think in 2017, and it's yielded enormous returns. So I just want to say that's a great initiative, most importantly, to help low income communities of color access college and higher education. And then secondly, I want to say, the $500,000 for Providence Community Libraries, Cheryl Space, Sue Gibbs, they're doing great work. And I wish that allocation was higher, as the chairwoman alluded to. And we all know how important our community libraries are to our community. So I want to thank the administration for acknowledging that work and for providing resources for our public libraries. These are critical investments, and I look forward to hearing more about these line items and from those organizations specifically about their needs and how this critical funding will help them serve the people of our neighborhood. So thank you for that, Diana.
Well, I'm actually going to expand. Thank you, Councilman. The community libraries played an unbelievable role in helping to stabilize our communities that were so hard hit by COVID. They really stepped up to the plate in so many ways. We've seen them really emerge as community centers. They need more resources, and that's why I asked on why $500,000 was allocated to them. It seems like they need more resources, but we'll leave it at that and we'll delve into this deeper. Again, this is intended as an overview so that we can, delve into the areas that we think we need to as we go forward. But I wanted to expand upon Councilman Gunkel's comments on that regard. Councilwoman LaFortune?
Thanks, Chair. I agree. The community libraries play such a critical role in our community before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and will continue to do so, particularly in marginalized communities. And so I also agree that the 500,000 is not enough. It should be more investments going into our libraries, also our community centers, because I did notice that there were a couple of community centers where funding was not allocated towards, and I believe it was the West End Community Center, Washington Park, and Silver Lake. So I'm not sure if that's just a bit of a confusion or maybe I overlooked something, but I would like to see, because those community centers play such a vital role in the community in really serving our young people, our youth, and our teens, and they need a lot of support. And I think the pandemic has shown us the importance of having like the libraries and the community centers, how they help students, right? And so many of our kids don't have access to a computer or internet, or they don't even know, or their families don't even know how to navigate the internet, and the library is a tool to help them succeed, as well as the community center. So I definitely think that we should really consider providing more allocation towards those areas. And during the task force meetings, those were things that also came up, that we need to invest more in our libraries. We need to invest more in our community centers. We need to invest more in just programming and initiatives that supports our youth.
Thank you, Councilwoman LaFortune. Well said. And I can't help myself, but I'm going to continue on that same vein. The community libraries already have wonderful programming. They've developed programming and they've enhanced their programming, particularly to address the need during COVID. And it really was remarkable. That's an example of an existing infrastructure. It's already set up. They're desperate for additional resources. It's not like we're creating a new program. So we really need to rethink that. That stands out to me like a sore thumb. Okay, please continue, Diana.
Okay. And just to answer your question from earlier, Madam Chair, there are 9 community libraries.
Good job. Thank you.
I have team members listening who texted me that, so I can't take full credit. So to continue, I think we're on the food security grant. Okay, so for the food security infrastructure planning, so this is intended to develop a long-term Providence emergency food security response plan that identifies successes and weaknesses in the 2020 response system. And that really helps us assess the current infrastructure and needs, then and establish a food security network that can be activated in the event of a future emergency within the city of Providence. I mean, it was incredible how many meals we were able to get up, but that was a gargantuan effort with prior minimal coordination, little coordination with the state. And it proved to be, if we had proper planning in place, we could have been activating much earlier, working with partners, utilizing existing refrigeration spaces, and really getting even more food food that is healthy and not just non-perishables to people during crisis. The last line, I'm sorry, I think majority leader Taylor.
Thank you, Diana, for the assist there. Councilman Taylor.
Yes, a couple things. I just wanted to highlight, because I know it's probably on the next page, that Councilwoman LaFortune, Silver Lake, Washington, and West End are there. They're on the next page, because I looked at that when she said that, but it's on page 3 for the community centers. But I think going back to, and I'm going to reiterate what everybody said, I think these 3 here, the community library, the food security, and the elderly services, as we all know, the elderly were hit the hardest. And I think all those 3 are way too low. I don't think it's enough money. for any one of those three, especially the elderly and especially the library. And the food security, I guess my question would be, did we think about, or are we thinking about donating money or whatever? I mean, I can speak for myself, and I think many council people can. Without the three, I'm going to give all three that I know. There might be more. The Elijah Project, the Food Bank, and Aramark giving out the food. We wouldn't have made it through this pandemic without their help. And I think that we should, I don't know if it's included in this security infrastructure plan, because I haven't seen it, but I know Elijah Project especially, they did, I think they gave out food, I think, in every ward. And Aramark was doing it in the schools, and the food bank was also. So I would hope that we would look into those three, or including those three in the next whatever. I don't know. But again, those three, the community library and the food security, and especially the elderly services, that is way too low compared to some of where we're spending our other money. Thank you.
I agree, Councilman, well said. We certainly learned food insecurity was such a big topic during the really bad days of COVID. So I completely agree with him on that. Please continue, Diana.
Thank you. To address the question, I think that Majority Leader Taylor had was, we would absolutely be working with those organizations in developing this plan. I don't know that we're not at a point where we're RFPing or putting out resources to organizations. It's more specific about creating the structure and plan necessary so we can be better set up in the future. However, I'll note that at the same time, our CDBG application RFP is soon to open up. So we're encouraging some of the organizations too, who are in immediate need of direct support for food, especially things like that, to apply through CDBG. Excuse me.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilman.
And then the last line item, elderly services support. Oh, it's not the last, 400,000 to elderly services support. Yes, so I absolutely recognize the feedback of how little is in this fund. I'm so sorry, I have a tickle.
Okay.
So the intention with this fund is to increase RIPTA access for individuals of low income, and make availability to safe shelter for seniors, and also create virtual access to services, including telehealth, senior center activities, etc. In addition, it should address food and health disparity concerns with the elderly community and meet financial needs for home improvement deficits and low income residents. And escalate availability to health education access virtually. Now, $400,000 doesn't do all of that, but we have a number of other programs that are noted within the proposed ordinance that the elderly community can tap into. And these resources are intended to help the elderly navigate those programs so that they can gain access to home repair if needed, or gain access to any other service that's provided. This does, though, increase investment in providing training opportunities for, well, I say that so formally, but to really help our elderly residents gain access to technology and not feel isolated. That was a big thing throughout COVID. And we want to make sure that our elderly community feels connected to their families. So we're looking to make investments in that. And another point of connectivity is to ensure that people have access to transportation, and thus the piece on REPTA. So the funds here are really intended to leverage other funds and make these services and opportunities available to our elderly residents. The next line item, which you all have already pointed to, were the community center grants. Now, I'll be clear on this one. So this was actually, this $300,000 amount here was approved under the FY22 budget, but my understanding is that was included in the general budget articles and wasn't added to the ordinance. So we're just looking to clarify that and rectify that. So we're clarifying which centers specifically will be receiving the funds, and just putting it on the ordinance officially, so it's clear that it's coming from the American Rescue Plan dollars.
Councilman Taylor?
Yes,
Councilman-
going back to the elderly service supports, again, I'm gonna throw up a flag for RIPTA. That shouldn't be the city of Providence doing that. That should be, in my opinion, the state of Rhode Island should be putting money into this program or programs to help out the elderly, for RIPTA. That's just my opinion on that one. And how come I see community centers, but how come no recreation centers are included in here?
My understanding was that this fund, which was approved under the FY22 budget, but wasn't under the ARPA ordinance, was specific to community centers.
Okay, so recreation centers are not included. They're not, you can't include recreation centers. I guess they're not part of the thing. I guess that's my question. I know they're not part of this plan, but are they?
So the
things
recreation.
you can't get money for?
So we are building in, so with the Park and Recreation Capital Project Fund, that will also touch upon our rec centers. We're also looking at potentially doing investments from our childcare investment line to see if there's a way that we can improve facilities for childcare at rec centers or at community centers, currently available spaces that can be used for that. So there are other ways that the rec centers specifically will get funding from this. And adding to that, we did in the first ordinance pass an investment in summer camps that were going specifically to the rec centers to expand programs. And, as the rules say, the funds can be used over, allocated within 3 and spent in 5. So those funds will continue to support expansion of programs in summers to the rec centers. I think council, yeah, no problem.
You all set, Councilman? Does that answer
Yes,
your
all set.
question?
Yep, thank you.
Please continue, Diane.
Please scroll down. I believe that the finance team was going to speak to the revenue recovery portion of this. We are allocating almost $28 million to cover that portion. And then $3 million to manage the administration of all of these programs, particularly ensuring the compliance portions that we're keeping up to date in communication, and that we have sufficient staffing to really, carry this out appropriately.
So we're going to switch over to the finance team. We're going to give Diana an opportunity to get a drink of water and take a break. We're going to probably get you back on the administration topic, but let's switch over to our famous finance team. And I'd like to understand, you really need to spell out this recovery, revenue recovery piece in detail for us. And is that enough? What are the components of this?
Madam Chair, thank you for bringing us back on the call. Director Silveria and Deputy Director Lindberg have prepared a document presentation, and at this time, with your permission, I would defer to them and let them lead that conversation as they have prepared all of the necessary documents.
The document's been shared with our auditor?
Yes, it has.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 27 million or 28 million that we have in this ordinance is to the 19.5 million that was approved with the 22 budget that we're currently in. So the total amount that we're asking for revenue recovery is $47,456,790. With the final rule, I know we gave a presentation back in about the 19.4 million. So between the interim rule and the final rule, there weren't many changes to the provision for revenue loss. The two main ones, I think, are there was an additional stipend for smaller communities of $10 million that doesn't apply to us, and then the percentage of budget growth changed from 4.2% to 5.2%, so they did expand that there.
I can't, what was that again, please? You broke up a bit. I'm sorry, you're breaking up a little bit.
Sorry. In the interim
to 5.2, what was that?
That was the assumed rate of budget growth. So the way that the Treasury guided municipalities on the revenue loss was you could use the higher of 4.2% annual budget growth or the average of 3-year growth before the pandemic began. And so when we looked at the 19.4 million that we requested, we were using an average of 3%. So we didn't go quite up to that 4.2%. We took what we needed to basically keep current government services funded at a consistent level with prior years and just the level of service that our city provided before the pandemic. And so then with the new rule, they changed that to the threshold, you could go up to 5.2%. So it didn't really have any effect on our calculations on what we thought we needed. And then coming up with the additional 27.9 million that we thought we needed, my finance team and I really were guided by our 5-year plan that was submitted on December 31st. And so, so that's how we came up with the money that we needed for revenue recovery in order to keep our fiscal stability for the next couple of years as we recover from the pandemic.
There's no contingency component built into that?
So there's not. So with the revenue recovery, if we're using ARP funds in our general fund, we're not permitted to recognize a surplus. So we would be budgeting this every year and then monitoring the budget and making sure that we're making choices or pivots as the year progresses to make sure that we stay on budget within the range that we need to be in.
Okay. Madam Auditor, they said you had a copy of this document?
Yes, that's incorrect. I haven't received a copy.
Director Silveria, could you make sure the auditor gets the revenue recovery piece so that she can review it and advise us? Okay.
We did speak about it earlier, but I didn't see anything. Am I correct? Sarah, you didn't forward anything, right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
There's a slide deck submitted for the meeting, but I'm happy to go over more detail with you. And even if you want, when we talk about the 5-year plan, we can talk a little more in depth about specific revenue and expense projections.
That's a big piece. We just want to make sure we get this right. Okay. All right, Madam Auditor, is that okay? So you'll review that once you get it for us?
Yes, we'll do.
Okay, good. Anything more on this topic? Any questions from any council members, committee members? Okay, thank you very much, Director Silveria. Appreciate your input. Let's go back to our friend Diana Perdomo. I hope you had something to soothe your throat and that you're ready to talk about the administration piece. I know many of my council colleagues are very concerned to make sure there's a lot of moving parts here. And I think that was everyone's first reaction. There's a lot going on. And I know that you worked diligently on your procedures manual, and I asked who had oversight and who was going to be responsible to make sure all the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted and so forth. So the council is particularly concerned about the administration of these funds. Obviously, they're federal dollars, and there's a higher burden to meet. But more importantly, we have experience with the CIP, capital improvement program recently, where projects have been delayed, they haven't been on time, they were overspent or underspent, and that's our concern, and it's a valid concern with this. So I appreciate the efforts that you've taken to try to establish procedures. I'm just interested in knowing, could you please explain what this $3 million is all about and how you intend to administer this program?
Yes, happy to. And I completely hear your concerns, Madam Chair. I take this incredibly seriously. These are federal dollars, and we really only have this opportunity to use these funds. And we would be in a terrible situation if we had to give these funds back because we didn't comply with the federal guidance. I certainly don't want that to happen for the city of Providence.
Nor do we.
So,
What is the timeline, Diana? What's the
timeline?
timeline on utilization of these funds before, if we don't use them, we lose them?
Right.
What does that look like?
So the plan itself says it has to be obligated within 3 years and spent within 5. And we're already about halfway into the first year. So we have to make those obligations now.
Is it 100% obligated? Is there a percentage obligated? How do they do that?
No, they just
It obligated in 3, spent in 5.
Yes.
Do you have to obligate the entire bucket of funds?
My understanding of the rules is yes.
Okay.
And so what we've done for this administrative line, I mean, a lot of the work that's gone to date into the plan has come from the administrative funding that was passed in the first ordinance. So the teams around the public engagement and the consulting and support, the subcontractors we work with there to do that work. The team at iParametrics, who's been supporting us in our compliance efforts, meeting with them regularly. We also have employed some team members that I mentioned earlier as part of the recovery office. And we've also been tapping into some of our existing staffing to help do community engagement, communications, and to also ensure that, our legal reviews, like our payroll, like all the pieces relative to compliance. So that is what essentially this administrative funding line will be to have in continuation, so that we still have the resources to make sure that we are adhering to the federal guidelines, that we're meeting our reporting requirements, and that we're running these programs efficiently and effectively.
Who is the Oversight Authority? So you have procedures and plans in place. You told us that you manage the process and the procedures. Who oversights your work?
Who oversees my work?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm on the mayor's leadership team, and I work very closely with the mayor's leadership team and people across the city. I think that there is some autonomy given to me in my position because I'm in a leadership role, and there are certain decisions I have to make. And this review is part of that. For instance, I will be signing off on all the contracts in addition to the department directors and legal and the mayor's office. As these go through, we just want to make sure they're all checked. So the responsibility really does lie on me, as I am the person who's most accountable.
I guess what I'm asking is there's no oversight, there's no audit, independent review of the project work, the budgets, the procedures that are in place.
Well, I would say that the federal government, the federal government will certainly act as my boss in that way.
Yeah, well, we don't want that to happen. We want to be able to make sure we're doing the right thing before the federal government comes in and tells us otherwise.
Absolutely, but the way that this will work is, so the compliance and reporting guidelines provided by the Treasury actually outlines what we have to submit and report. So we're going ahead and we're creating templates of that sort, getting it to the departments. We're actually hoping to push this to a more online mechanism so there's easier tracking. So the idea would be that as we're submitting our reports, some at a monthly, others at a quarterly capacity, getting the information from our subgrantees and the departments we're working with, our plan is to provide those more like on our, we have to provide quarterly reports. So at those reports, the federal government will ask us additional questions. The earlier reports have been pretty minimal. They're just asking, do you have a plan in place? Have you spent any dollars? And they're going to provide us guidance along the way to make sure that we're adhering. Now, where we'll get in trouble is if we miss deadlines or if we're not playing by the rules. Then they'll come down on us on that. But at this point, we'll be able to work with them to make sure that we are compliant. And as long as we have our, fiscal controls in place, we have we make sure that we're staying on top of our deadlines. I think we're in a good space. I'll say that our fiscal specialist that's been added to our team, she comes with years of federal grant experience. She was actually working at Brown University previously on some large federal grants that they had received. And so she's helping us with submitting the reports. The parametrics team as well is helping us review every single component of the reports, and they're working with cities across the state and the country. And so they're able to give us a lot of insight on, what this question was with this city and how to provide the information in that way. So we have a lot of ways that we're making sure that we're, checking that we are following the right steps and ensuring that our information is accurate and submitted to the liking of the federal government.
How are you checking to make sure that the people that we're engaging, have appropriate internal controls or are eligible to complete the work? What type of compliance reviews are you doing or will be done with these partners?
Right. So as we go through our award and contracting stage with any of these partners, we're going to clarify the rules and regulations required within ARPA and point to our policy manual. We're stating early on, the requirement to submit regular reports. For some of the programs that feel newer, so for instance, the Mentoring Rhode Island Award that just came out from the first ordinance spend, their contract is requiring monthly reporting. They're new, we don't know how it's going to go. We want to be really strict on that. So that's a requirement. We'll see how the program goes. If we feel confident with how it's being carried out to what we programmed it to be, and that was how the RFP was designed, then we can go to quarterly reports, which is what the federal government requires. So that's how we're going about it. It's really in the early, contracting and negotiation phase. We're also clarifying in all of our RFPs and anything that goes out that this has to comply with the state and local recovery funds of the American Rescue Plan. And note that any award, any contract is really contingent on any of those rules.
Any committee members, council members have any questions? Any hands up? No? Okay. Does that conclude your presentation, Diana? It does. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Continue.
And thank you so much to everyone for giving me the opportunity to speak today and present this budget. The only thing I'll also say is that I know it's been a long night and the task force report is next on the agenda. I just really appreciate that you're hearing that item as well. So thank you so much for the time, and I'm happy to come back.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so may I have a motion to continue item number 1?
So move.
Motion made by Vice Chair Castillo, seconded by
Second.
Council Majority Leader Taylor. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carried. The matter is continued. I want to thank you very much. Diana, you did a great job, and I hope that you get an opportunity to rest up your throat. That was great. We really appreciate it. It gives us a great overview, and we're going to drill down more department by department, topic by topic. And I know my council colleagues had some really good questions, and we're going to look to that on the documents that you said you would provide. I'm interested in leveraging, on the homeless topic. Providence didn't create that problem. We need help from the state. We're all in the same boat. So we need to make sure that our dollars are appropriately leveraged so that we do the best job we absolutely can. That's just one example. So leveraging is critical, I think, on all of these dollars. And the other thing is if it's a new program that's being created that isn't functioning, I'd like you to somehow identify that for us. So in other words, what we're creating anew versus existing programs going forward. All right. Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, could you please read item 2 into the record, please?
Communication from Angela Bannerman, Ancona, and Oscar Mahias, co-chairs, dated November 23rd, 2021, informing Mayor Jorge Olorza, Council President John J. Rehousing, and the honorable members of the City Council of the COVID-19 Recovery and Resiliency Task Force Report Executive Summary.
Thank you very much. Do we have Angela Bannerman Akuma and Oscar Magis here with us?
Angela is here.
Angela is here.
I am here. My co-chair,
Let's
Oscar,
go.
unfortunately, he had to step off a little early, but due to another commitment.
Well, first, I would like to say thank you very much for your work. As I stated, your work is informing this committee. So we feel that you're helping us out quite a bit here, and we've got a lot of work to do. I think that as we went through these line items, we recognized we need to understand a lot more about each and every one of them. And I know you put quite a bit of effort into the task force. So I didn't expect you to, speak too long tonight. It is getting very late. But I did want to recognize you. And I think what we're going to do is actually continue this matter, and it will stay kind of like a twin with this ordinance as we move along. So I invite you to continue to participate with us. And if you wanted to make any broad comments tonight by way of introduction, I'm more than happy to give you that opportunity if you could be brief.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I think Diana provided a very comprehensive overview on the actual budget items over the past couple of months that we reviewed. And so I don't have anything further to add this evening. I know we've had a very long night, so thank you.
Thank you, but I'm serious. I would like you to stick with us, and we hope to continue to keep you engaged in this discussion, and I'm sure that you can help fill in some of the gaps for us. I see my friend Councilwoman Anthony has her hand up.
Yes.
Is that an old hand or a new hand?
No, it's a new hand. My new hand is up. I wanted to thank the co-chairs and the committee for the work they've done. And I think it's really important for us to hear from them because we need to understand the process they went through and the extensive outreach they did to the community. I think my concern from the very beginning was that there wasn't any, public input on the spending of the ARPA funds. I was able to dip in and out of the committee meetings at various times. I was so impressed with the process and the groups they contacted. I know it's set out in the report, but I think it would be really, really important for the council members in particular and others who are tuning in to hear exactly what their process was from the co-chairs and how extensive it was, because this is guided. These recommendations are really guided by the community input and the hard work of this committee. And I think it deserves some time at our finance meeting to discuss that.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Okay, with that, I think we've said enough. It's late in the hour. May I have a motion, seeing there's no further business? Oh, we got to continue this. Motion to, thank you, Madam Clerk. She got all excited. Motion made to continue by Councilman Castillo, seconded by Councilman Taylor. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Item 2 is continued. And as I said, it's going to continue along with, in tandem with the budget itself. Seeing there's no further business before this honorable committee, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn made by Vice Chair Castillo.
Second.
And by Councilman Taylor. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you all for your time, your energy, and your input. It was a great discussion tonight. We've only just begun. Have a good evening. Stay safe. Stay warm. Don't exert yourself with the snow.